Rejoice, for the light has come, and he is clothed in glory. Come alive, for the King is here. All the earth is responding.
Caleb, my dear friend, thank you for being on the show today. For those of you who don't know, Caleb is an artist, he's a producer, he's a writer, he's a storyteller, a successful musician who's based out of Nashville. So Caleb, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. If you were to tell us a little bit about you in your own words, because I could give you plenty of accolades, what would you...
let me do it.
Yeah, what would you say about yourself?
Oh, well, I am a 10-year Nashvilleian now. Been here for 10 years. My wife and I moved here right after we got married in 2014. And I moved here to play bluegrass music, and I've been a sideman in various bluegrass and folk bands and Irish bands and stuff for the last 10 years, and even longer than that, because I was playing at least semi-professionally before we moved here. Still doing that to an extent. I'm a songwriter, but most importantly, I'm Anna's husband, and and I try to be a good friend and a good brother to people, and and if I can write good songs and help other people write good songs and play good shows, then that's great too. But that's kind of who I am.
What was the original pull that led you to Nashville? How would you describe it, and how would you describe saying yes to it?
Oh, so I lived in East Kentucky. That's where I went to school, at the Kentucky School of Bluegrass and Traditional Music, which is in Hyden, Kentucky, Leslie County. And my wife, before we were married, she lived outside of Cincinnati, which I'm from that area too, in Indiana. And we were already engaged, and we knew that we did not want to live where we grew up. And so at the time, she was kind of throwing around becoming a nurse, and I had just finished this music degree. I went to a conference here in Nashville called the Society of the Preservation of Bluegrass Music in America. It's called SPIGMA. And so I went, I was with a band at the time that I knew I wasn't going to last. And so I went to SPIGMA looking for a job, and I found one. I found a couple, actually. And I met this gentleman. His name is Brad Bulla. He was starting a band, and him and Craig Morris, which Craig Morris actually just passed away a few months ago. But both of them were starting a band, and they were looking for a mandolin player. And so I was like, yeah, I'm in. And Brad said, well, do you live here? And I said, well, not yet. And so I remember on the drive home from Nashville, I called Anna, my wife, fiance at the time, and I said, what do you think about moving to Nashville? And I could kind of hear a little kind of a gasp, because it was considerably further away than what we had been looking at. And it was God's plan. It just kind of immediately fell into place then. And so I graduated the 1st of May. We got married May 31st. We took a week-long honeymoon. And by like June the 8th or 9th, we were moving into our first place. And by July 4th, I was playing the Station Inn with this band. And it was just kind of there you go. That's, I just fell into it, sort of, kind of, but it's also like very much the place that we needed to be at.
If you could describe your journey as a musician in Nashville so far, what would you say?
You and I have talked about this before. A lot of dying to yourself, death to self. That's when that started happening, when I started realizing that a lot of my ego needed to die. That's when things started popping off. That's when I actually started having a good time and started playing good music. Nashville is such an interesting town because, the person who delivers your mail, or makes your coffee is probably a better musician than you are. And it's a weird anomaly to exist in. But that being said, it is oversaturated. But if you can set yourself aside by just being yourself, you know, that's going to stand out more than hot licks and even, you know, great vocals and stuff like that. Most of the time, it will take longer. That's sort of what I've learned. And I'm naturally just an introvert. And so the networking part of it was always really, really difficult for me. Just playing the games of sort of trying to get into cliques and stuff that honestly just communities I really didn't even want to be involved with. You know, the people were good musicians, but if I looked at who they were individually, I'm like, you're not really a person I would hang out with outside of just playing tunes. And when I kind of decided that, first of all, music, being a musician, playing the mandolin, that is not my first and foremost identity. It wasn't going to be who or what I'm shaped after. When I made that choice and kind of like set it aside, that my community changed just naturally. And God just placed people in my life that were brilliant musicians and writers and artists of all kinds, but also did not place those as their primary identity, and their identity is in Christ. And so, you know, immediately God placed me with a community, or in a community of people that think that way, believe that way, live their life that way. And so because of that, you know, I played the game for a long time, just trying to get the next gig, and realizing that, like, I don't really like this music. These people are good people. Some of them, some of them are not good people. I'm like, I wouldn't want to really hang out with these people. But the money was good. And I'm thinking, okay, the money's really not even worth it if I don't like the music we're playing in the company. And so just in the last calendar year, I got off the road and I work at a cigar lounge now. And the music I play is my own and with people I love. And so that's a hard place to get to. It's taken 10 years. They say this is a 10-year town because it takes 10 years for people to notice you. I think it took me 10 years to realize that I only wanted to be noticed by God. That was all I cared about. And when I made that decision, I started just pumping out songs and playing shows that weren't huge by any means, but I had a lot of fun and made friends and fans, people like that, and was a whole lot more creative than I've ever have been, because you're sort of taking the commercial side out of creativity. And that was always the biggest struggle for me. I'm a good songwriter, but people would say, like, oh, you should go try to get a publishing deal. What you really need to do is get a publishing deal and start writing for people, you know, like whoever's on the top 40 country or even Christian radio. And I was thinking, but yeah, first of all, I don't like any of those songs. I can't stand them. And anything that I write, I don't really want to hear anybody else sing it, because I know they're not going to do as good a job as I can. And so I sing my own songs. And I realize that when it comes out of my mouth, it sounds kind of arrogant, but it's not that. It's more of this is my story. Like no one else can do that.
So no, it doesn't sound arrogant. It sounds like someone who would be shadow banned. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like someone the algorithm would go,
yeah,
he doesn't like any of their songs. No. Gotta reel him in. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, well, that's me.
Okay, so what's beautiful about you is that you can take 10 years and condense it into like a 5-minute soundbite, which is great. I wish that all pastors across the universe could find a way to do that. However, I want to know some of the places that you played, some of the dope experiences you had on the road.
I've played some big venues that have been like, yeah, bucket list places. But some of my favorite places are just some of the coolest towns in North America that you've ever seen, with some of the just coolest audiences. Like, I remember one of my favorite gigs I did with this bluegrass band that I had for a couple of years. Like, we played at a bicycle shop in St. Louis, and like that was so much fun. We played around one microphone, and we had maybe 30 people sitting in there. It was a bike shop and coffee shop, I think. And I booked it in the first place because I used to play a bike shop and coffee shop in Cincinnati with a band that I was involved with that's still around. Actually, they're called My Brother's Keeper, Christian folk band out of Cincinnati. They're excellent, and they're my wife's cousins too. But those are honestly some of the gigs I did with them. We'd play in churches and we'd play in coffee shops and back alleys, and that was so much fun. But I've been really fortunate to like find the joy in the small places. Like, I just played a house show in this beautiful like Victorian era home, and the host he's a big Civil War buff, which I am too. And so after the show, he just kind of showed me the whole house and all these relics that he had, and which is really cool. But like, I've played the Telluride Bluegrass Festival, which is, you're playing to a few thousand people just staring at this mountain range in front of you, and you're kind of tucked into this valley, and you have to get from the stage to the condo that they put you up in, you have to take a gondola to get there and to get back. And there's like only one road in and out of the festival, and when the festival starts, it's so big that they shut down that road, and so you're just on foot the entire week. And like, that festival is amazing, just a beautiful place. Like, I saw Nora Jones there, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And so like, that's cool. There's a beautiful Celtic festival in Godridge, Ontario, right on the lake, which I think is Lake Huron, I think. Beautiful festival. Just kind of a small Irish festival. The coolest part about it is you get to listen to these amazing musicians from the British Isles and from sort of the east coast of Canada, Nova Scotia and stuff like that. And you get to hear all these players, and then at night, after the festival closes, they all go to this pub. We all drink pints and just play tunes until the sun comes up, and then you go and do it again. And so you do that for a few days. And I had some of the best fish and chips in my life at that festival. And so it's stuff like that brings memories that I'm like, yeah, that's like, I like to explore the towns that I have the opportunities to play in. And so, if we get there half an hour before sound check, you're not going to see me. Like, I'm going to go explore. A friend of mine, Jake, who he and I played in an Irish band together, he would say, Caleb always seems to find woods somehow. We could be in metropolitan New York and he's going to find woods somehow. So it calls to me. So I'm always trying to explore. But yeah, those are some of my favorite places that right off the top of my head.
As someone who has cut their teeth in this city, do you think that set a good stage for you to go out on your own and start your own artistry? Because you did that.
Oh, totally.
In that format.
After 8 years of that or whatever, I feel like I have almost a master's or doctorate in education as far as what not to do.
Okay. So, I will be honest. This is the part that I'm actually more curious about.
Yeah.
Because some of my best teachers in life have been the worst bosses.
Totally.
And I'm like, oh, it was so painful to endure you, but thank you for all the lessons learned that I don't want to repeat, right? And so what lessons could you tell us, could you share with us that you might think would be valuable and helpful.
Yeah. What I see a lot, especially in folk music, which is a very small, there's not a lot of money in it, if we're being honest. Folk music, bluegrass music, that kind of stuff. People tend to play it very close to the chest and hire people who are really close to them, or perhaps even related, to do whatever. It's usually in management positions, and that's a mistake. I usually, unless that person is a professional tour manager, for example, like if that person is a tour manager, like great, that's awesome. But if you're trying to hire, I don't know, your nephew or your sister or even your wife or your husband just to be together on the gig, or maybe you're trying to help them out or something, that usually does not end well.
So Anna, good luck for you. You don't have to worry about that position.
She would be a fantastic tour manager, but we know each other well enough that she's not gonna be mine.
Mm-hmm. So don't hire a close relative or friend. What else?
Yeah, well, I would say to an extent. I mean, there's all the musicians I hire are some of my best friends.
Okay.
But we're all professional. We know that if something comes up where maybe I've said something hurt them, we can talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're professional enough to usually say, like, he's having a rough moment. Like, we're not going to take it personally. Like, that happens.
Yeah.
And being a good hang, that's the whole Nashville thing. Like, being able to play well, sing well, read a chart, that kind of stuff, playing time. But like being a good hang, like that's the most important thing. Like just being a fun person to hang out with. Don't have drama, don't do drugs, that kind of stuff. Like that's important. And probably, in my opinion, probably more important than all the other stuff. Like I've seen people get hired strictly because they're fun to be around. They're not even the greatest player. And I would say that, especially if you're the boss, you have to be a good hang. Like, it's stressful being out there handling big contracts, perhaps. There's a lot of money. Maybe if you blow a tire and you don't make it to the show, maybe you're out so much money or whatever. Like, that's hard. I get it. But you have to juggle the stress of managing a band, and then also the stress of being a good person to work for. And I've been with people who've done that really well. I've been with people who have been really bad at that. And yeah, that's just and everyone has their good days and everyone has their bad days, and I've definitely been that. I've been that manager where I've had really great days managing, employees for a weekend, and I've done it where I've had really bad weekends where I just did not steward my relationship well with people that have worked for me for a week or whatever. But that's I think that hiring people that you can trust, maybe that means paying a little bit more for it.
Sure.
And also maybe realizing like, I can only pay the band members this much for a week or whatever to go out for a week-long tour. I can only pay them this much, which is maybe a half of what the average day rate is. Then you probably don't need a band. Like, making those choices, you probably need a trio or a duo or something. Just like take one person and pay them really well. Making those kind of decisions, like, that's hard because I love playing in bands. I love it. And I'm friends with some of just the best pickers in Nashville, and they're worth the money. And so I hate sometimes not being able to hire them because I'd rather pay them what they're worth, instead of giving them a firm handshake and a sandwich. But yeah, making those decisions to maybe I can't have, just don't cut corners. That's the thing. It's do the hard thing. And that means with the people that you hire, like maybe this person can take video of you and it's cheap, or maybe you could just like go out and actually save up and hire the person that's a videographer. that sort of stuff, you know.
If you were to meet this young musician,
Mm-hmm.
or better yet, this musician who is not young, who's
Mm.
just been carrying around this dream of moving to Nashville
Yeah.
to make a name for themselves, to do the deal, and you were to talk to them today and they said, I've been thinking about it, I've been praying over it, I want to move, what would your immediate response be?
Great. Do you have a community? No? Come over on Tuesday. We'll have you for dinner. I'll introduce you to some folks. Here in the last couple of years, we've had, especially after COVID, there's just been this huge surplus. I think maybe it's because I'm in my 30s now, and you start seeing like
Oh, you're so old, Caleb.
I know, right? Well, it's you leave a decade and you start to see, because I was 20 when we moved here, and you start to see 20-year-olds move to town, and I'm like, oh gosh, what it's like to be 20 years old and broke, living in Nashville, and
especially now,
right? And so there was probably a handful of 6 or 7 young people who moved here right within a year, and most of them were young guys, and so I just sort of became buddies with them at some point. Maybe I knew them before they came here to live, and they called me. Like, oh, a good example is my friend Johan Glidden, who's super talented, wonderful believer, can sing, can play, can write, all of it. He could probably dance too, but I'm not going to ask him to do that. But he's one that I actually met him back in like 2017 at the Telluride Bluegrass Festival. He was there with a band, and I kept up with him online, and he had left that band, and he was doing very faith-based music, and I'm like, oh, interesting. I didn't know that about him. I didn't know him well enough to sort of get his story, but we kept up over the years, and 2 years ago or something, he called me about what I thought about him moving to Nashville. And I knew I had listened to enough of his music that I'm like, yeah, it's kind of stupid that you're not here. Let's, get here. So he came and he stayed with us for a week or so. And I kind of pointed him into some directions of, yeah, you should probably go to this show or go hang out with these people or go meet that person or whatever. And I think he had some contacts himself. So now he's been here for a year and a half, 2 years, and he's killing it. He's just doing really well. But he moved here about the same time when I had this surplus of guys. And so we would just go to this cigar lounge, and I would just I had this text thread of maybe 6 or 7 guys. Some of them were folks that had already lived here and were a bit older, and some of them were young guys and who didn't have anybody. And so we were constantly just having people over for dinner who just didn't have anybody to hang out with. People coming to church with us, or people coming to these little pipe nights that we called them, and smoking pipes, having pints, and just talking about music, talking about the Lord, and what their purpose was. For some of them weren't even musicians. Some of them were show promoters. Some of them were videographers. Some, just kind of trying to get into the industry somehow, some way. And so that turned out to be really great. I kind of took it upon myself to sort of steward these young guys and just say, like, hey, you don't know anybody. You also don't know anybody. There you go. You know one more person now. And some of them are roommates now. Some of them are playing in each other's bands. Some of them are, it's great. It's great to see that there's this little community now that I am a part of, but also that sort of exists without me too. It's wonderful to see that. So I would say, if you were new, give me a call, have you over for dinner, and I have a whole community for you to know, because I did not have that when I moved here. We had just the guys in the band that I played with, and that was hard because I was the youngest too by like 40 years. And so, we were just married, just didn't have a church, didn't have friends, and didn't know what we were doing, and that was really, really difficult. And so if I know you're coming to town to live and you don't have any people, like, we'll take care of that.
How would you describe your change in relationship with God since coming here, and your change in relationship with religion since coming here?
That's a great question. I kind of got to this place. This might be a long-winded answer because it requires some context. We got married in 2014, May of 2014. By this time, late 2014, kind of the fall into the winter, she was diagnosed right at Christmas. But my wife was diagnosed with a kidney disease, and so she was in. I think we took her to the ER maybe 7 times that fall, following our wedding, and we were going to this church that was very big. I'm a Southern Baptist, born and bred. My dad's a Southern Baptist pastor. My wife is also a pastor's kid of an independent Baptist pastor. So both of us grew up in church. We know all the things to say to someone who's just been diagnosed with a kidney disease. And we went to a church that was pretty large here in the area, a Southern Baptist church, and a lot of the women especially really loved on Anna, but a lot of the men, I know we're in the South, a lot of the men just don't know how to talk about that. And it caused us to have a miscarriage in early 2016. And once again, Anna sort of had this really beautiful community of women who had gone through that. You don't realize most women go through that. And so, sadly, yeah, it's a very common thing that nobody really talks about. And which is what I've learned at the time. These women have gone through it, and I see all these women come to our house and just pick up Anna, and they'd go see a movie or they'd go out for ice cream or whatever. And she'd come back and she'd feel a little bit better for a while. Well, the thing was, I knew all these women had husbands. Not one of them called me. And which it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, why didn't you call me? But also I'm like, I'm glad you didn't call me because I don't want to talk about this, which is furthering the reason why we don't talk about things.
For sure.
That period really made me frustrated with religion, and some with God. I also kind of realized that I just didn't have, I had this image of God that was very much an old man in the sky who was sort of dictating what we do every day, and kind of the clockmaker approach. And I sort of started, I really don't like the word because it's a buzzword, but sort of deconstructing that
Sure.
stuff.
It's definitely got a negative
It has a
thing on it right now.
It does. And, it is what I did to an extent. Both Anna and I did. But also, Anna prefers the word disentangling, which is a great word. But I very much looked at it as I have this house that was sort of built for me, and I'm really thankful for this house, and it has kept me warm, it's kept me dry, and I've been really comfortable in this house. But I'm realizing that in some parts of the house, the floor is rotten because I haven't been taking care of it. And I haven't, the house has been given to me. I haven't actually learned the skills to what it means to be a homeowner, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I started in this, if I may continue the metaphor, sort of renovating and figuring out what part of this structure can be salvageable. Yeah. And at one point, I could see myself getting really bitter with some aspects of it. And I think now it's probably more the religion side of it. At the time, I probably would have said God too, but I was definitely very frustrated with just with probably mainstream evangelicals, and that's when COVID happened, and you just a lot of crazy things that I don't think any of us had any answers for. And you didn't know what to believe. You didn't know who to trust. And there was always this like us versus them. Like, if you don't do this, well, then you're out of my life, kind of a thing.
Sure.
And on kind of both angles, both sides of that issue, and which is really hard to go through. And so many Christians on both sides were saying, look, this is an obvious stance that you have to take. It's either this, and then you'd have people on the other side of like, this is an obvious stance you have to take as a Christian. It has to be this. And that's was very confusing for me. And I kind of got to this point where if I would have kept going, probably within a few years, I probably would have called myself an agnostic. And I kind of woke up and was sort of blatantly unhappy with just who I was. And I decided, I kind of woke up one morning and I said this prayer, and I'm like, I'm going to give you one more shot, but you're going to have to come through.
Yeah.
And what I heard next was...
I also don't think that's the only time he's heard that. I think he's heard that a couple of times.
No, but kind of what I heard after that was, I'll be here. I haven't gone anywhere. It's you that's kind of not strayed. I mean, it definitely was, but it was more of a, like, I haven't moved. Like, you're going to have to come through for me too. So it's both which was kind of clicked that like, this is, and the Bible describes it as such. It's a relationship that very much reflects what a marriage is.
Sure.
And so I just started praying, reading scripture. We found a church that we really liked. And it was part of that, I think the reason why the term deconstruction is such a negative one is because no one ever talks about the reconstruction, which if you don't reconstruct, you just have a pile of
Rubble.
junk. Yeah.
Rubble.
There's just nothing to it.
Yeah. Which is wild, because with the way that, like, just bear with me, with the way that like entrepreneurs and business people work, if you think about the pile of rubble, later in life, if it was a business that had been like deconstructed and the pile is there, some other person would come along and go, oh, I can use the things that's there.
Right.
But whenever it comes to religion and the relationship with God, we don't ever look at it as broadly to see, oh, there's value in the rubble.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's value in brokenness.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, gosh, that's the gospel, isn't it? And so that was, after that, both my wife and I, we sort of, we realized that we were being drawn very slowly drawn and even called into, I mean, for lack of a better term, orthodoxy. Just, it was kind of like, okay, I'll look back at this church I grew up in, and like, there's some really beautiful parts about my childhood and growing up in the church that my dad still pastors. Like, I love the people there. But I sort of, and I was kind of like settled there for maybe like a week or two in my memory. I'm thinking like, okay, this is kind of how we did things. And then like kind of beyond that, I could see Jesus saying like, no, this ain't it. Like, keep coming. It's back here. And so I started reading, honestly, started reading a lot of the sort of early 20th century writers like C.S. Lewis and Chesterton. And I think Chesterton starts orthodoxy with the idea that he was looking for logic and he discovered orthodoxy. And I related to that so much, just by, you're looking for common sense and realizing it's been there the whole freaking time. And so a lot of the frustrations I had with the aesthetic of religion, I came to, how do I say it? A lot of the things that frustrated me about the church and religion, and it kind of stopped bothering me when I discovered the liturgy, and that this may be something that I don't know if this is true or not. realizing that I think a lot of, at least denomination, is sort of based on personality. And of course there's different doctrines to that.
Sure.
I think we're, if the aesthetic of the church sort of like is parallel with our personality, we'll do whatever's necessary to sort of come to grips with the differing doctrines, which that's what I've done. But there's some of it where I'm like, I don't know, as far as the Anglican Church, for example.
Sure.
Some of it that I'm like, I don't really know what to think about that. It's different than how I grew up or what I was taught. But I know how I feel when I'm taking the Eucharist. I know how I feel when I'm singing these old hymns along beside my wife. I know how I feel when I'm speaking the liturgy. That not only, the people in this church are speaking along with me, but all these other churches across the globe and across time, the last 2,000 years of history. There's something really beautiful about that. Something really beautiful about knowing where you came from. And I've always been a big genealogy nerd.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to say like, oh yeah, this is exactly why we're here and why we see the things the way that we do, why we have this specific perspective about the world or whatever, you can see it sort of unwrapping and becoming what it is today. There's so many Christians that can't, that just don't have the ability or maybe even to care to know how that happens. And I started coming down that road where I'm being very open with God, and there was definitely a lot of like stuff that I struggled with even as a kid, being a little kid which every little kid's a big fan of dinosaurs, and I always struggled with creationism versus evolution and like that sort of stuff, and having to sort of like, I don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Being able to be okay with not knowing and the uncertainty and wrestling and realizing like that's the whole Old Testament is wrestling with God. And I read the Ragamuffin Gospel, which is Brennan Manning. If you don't know it, it's fantastic. It completely changed the life of Rich Mullins. And in this book, Brennan Manning quotes Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was on his deathbed. And this man comes up to Heschel and he says, what have you, in all of your life, what have you prayed for? What have you asked God for? And Heschel said, I asked God for wonder, and he gave it to me. And that struck something so deep within me that I felt like a little kid again. And so now, kind of no matter what it is about religion or God, if it continues to make me feel like a small child, I'm into it.
And that line of thinking, I feel like Nashville has a ton of churches.
Mm-hmm.
Like every flavor, every spice.
Oh, yeah.
Like a wide variety.
We're in the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yeah. As a person who has had the journey of deconstructing and maybe resurrecting and reconstructing, maybe it's still in process, maybe it's completed. I'm not even sure if we would know yet,
Mm-hmm.
And you're searching for wonder and the childlike faith, right?
Yeah.
How do you find, and I don't love all the churchy terms.
Sure.
Most people would say, how do you find a spiritual home?
Mm.
I won't say that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, how do you find a faith community that you identify with,
Mm-hmm.
and one that allows you not only to be yourself, but the people in it to also express who they really are?
Well, I think I'm probably a really good example of sort of being invited into a community by people who would allow me to be who I am. So a lot of the people that I play music with are also in that faith community. And one of my first gigs that I got called for sort of right after the pandemic, things were, mandates were starting to lift and stuff, was I got called to play this private party and just be like background music. And it was for a book release at this, for this organization called the Rabbit Room. And I had heard of the Rabbit Room. I knew of Andrew Peterson, who is one of the founders of the Rabbit Room. So I was vaguely aware, and a lot of my friends were sort of pretty heavily involved in it. So we went and played this gig. We just played like Irish tunes for this book release party. It was a very small group of people, and the book was Every Moment Holy. Every Moment is Holy, which is a book of liturgies for every holy moment. And it was the second one. I think there's 3 of them. This was the second one that was released. And it was just a small party for Doug McKelvey, who's the author. And I met Andrew Peterson there, and I had just started reading The Hobbit. And Andrew and pretty much everyone else in the Rabbit Room community are just big Tolkien nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And so I noticed that Andrew had Elvish written, or like as pearl inlay on the neck of the fingerboard of his guitar. I noticed that almost immediately. I'm like, is that Elvish? He's like, yes. And so we immediately kind of struck a friendship of being obsessed with Tolkien. And then I started getting invited just as a friend to some of their events. The local show is a sort of a writer's round that they host once a month. I was asked to perform at a couple of those in the last few years. And and they have a conference every year called Hutchmoot, and I was asked to come speak at Hutchmoot on a panel and just be involved with the community there. And Daniel, that's just been it's just been God's gift of community with that, because I needed people who were smarter than me and more gracious than me and probably more talented than I am to love me and to love me and my foolishness and my ignorance. And that's what they've been for me. So that community has been really, really special. And I mentioned that, and you know, I've mentioned that a few times on different podcasts and stuff. And I've always had people say like, oh, I wish I had that where I live. And the whole point of the Rabbit Room is that they try to teach you how to start that in your own town. So like I played a house show this past year in Memphis. Shout out to Nia and all the Lamp Burners Guild folks. But she doesn't live in Nashville. The Rabbit Room's based in Nashville, but she's like, I want to start that in my own community. So like they have a monthly moot, which is people just get together at this one house and they read stories that they've written. They sing songs that they've written. Maybe they show art that they've drawn or painted or whatever. And usually they have sort of a featured artist of some sort. Like I was the featured artist at one point, or just came and played like a show. Or they have, I know a potter came and set up his wheel, and it just made clay pottery and stuff. And so like she's a really great example of, the Rabbit Room's here. Like I'm very fortunate to be able to attend a lot of these things that happen here in Nashville. But you know, you don't have to move here to experience that. In fact, I think it's probably more impressive and more important if you stay where you're at and start it. And I know that if God ever called Anna and I to leave Nashville, we'd have to really consider that. Like, what can we do to like take what we've learned here and start it up somewhere else? And so, hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
I've been walking these streets feeling all alone with nothing but a dream and a microphone. The stuff I gotta say and a song I gotta sing. Oh Lord, you gotta tell me when I nail this thing. Summer's here and I've gotta go. Coffee on my breath, cigarettes in my lungs. I'm too old to be feeling this young. All of my friends are flying the coop, but I'm singing my songs on a concrete stoop. And summer's here and I've gotta go. And summer's end is when I comprehend that I am not the same. Lord, I give you all the blame. I've been reading all the books, I've been taking all the notes. I'm feeling mighty warm in my sugar coat. My head's getting bigger, but my heart's pretty small, like filling up a bucket with a big waterfall. Summer's here and I've gotta go. I've gotta go. I've renounced all the things that were keeping me sane. There's nothing on my plate but a side of King James. I gotta spread the trust from my heart to my head, but there's not enough butter and there's too much bread. And summer's here and I've gotta go. And summer's end is when I comprehend that I am not the same. And Lord, I give you all the blame. 'Cause then I know who it is that makes me shake my fist and cry. Then I know who it is who says to live is one who dies. Then I know who it is that makes me walk these streets alone. Oh, summer's here and I've gotta go. Oh, summer's here and I've gotta go. I've gotta go. Oh, summer's here and I've gotta go.
I didn't know I was going to do this, and
Okay.
this may go way off the may dive, right? But so far, I've been the one to ask you questions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to ask me anything?
Yeah. How dare you? For starters.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair.
You have a I've never heard you sing. I've never heard you play. I know that you write. I don't know that I've consciously have heard a song that you've written.
Sure.
What seems to be your gift and what you're really good at and what you seem to really enjoy is surrounding yourself by really brilliant, talented people.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? How did Hymnal come about, and how did you realize that this is something you could do, even though maybe you are a good singer, but like maybe those aren't the gifts that God's given you.
Sure.
How did that happen?
If I'm really honest with you, I started writing music at 9.
Okay.
I grew up in a church where you could learn how to play the instrument in church.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a church that had songwriters. And so it never felt far from me to learn because it was accessible when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so I would ask the guy who led at the time, his name was Tracy, how do you play the guitar? How do you write? and there was no pedestal between the stage and the people. He would just, if you want to know, here, let me give you the guitar that's literally on my back, and let me show you the chord positions. And so from that early stage, I started playing and learning to write. And I do write and I do sing. I sing a lot. I sing every week at church when I'm leading. But way before all of you met me, I was recording. And I had...
As an artist?
Yeah, as an artist. So a lot of the artist experience that a lot of you are having now, y'all just didn't see that chapter of my life.
Gotcha.
Because it took place before I knew you.
Yeah.
And so for me in this season specifically, because I'm internally an artist first, like it's still there.
Yeah.
I also am tenderhearted towards the artist because I know that it can be a tough journey. Because when I was doing it, you could go play a D now and like make money. You could go play a kids or a college thing or conferences. Back then, even on mission trips, you could be hired as the worship leader for the mission trip. And so there were different facets to like find pockets of money to piece together. Oh, I made rent this month. And those things have kind of dissipated. And I can't tell you really why. I can just tell you there are lots of reasons, but some of them have dissipated. And so when I see artists like yourself or other people in our community, I first think, man, if it wasn't for my dad, I would have never been an artist.
Yeah.
Because I've never heard my dad play music.
Yeah.
I mean, other than picking up my guitar and claiming he can play.
Yeah.
But what my dad gave me was belief. He always said, anything you want to do, you can achieve it.
Yeah.
And so I've never worried about starting a company or trying the artisan thing because I never looked at failure as though it was like something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
My dad always kind of mirrored this. It's a learning experience.
Yeah.
And so try being an artist, see what you can learn. Try starting a company, see what you can learn. And so for me, when I look at you or literally anybody in our community, I think, oh, you have so much potential that you won't even take the courage yet to lean into. So how about I believe in you?
Yeah.
Like you want to write a book.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with the idea of writing a book? Do you struggle with the process of writing a book? Or do you struggle with the organization of putting it together? Because those are all different components.
Sure.
If you just want to write a book, but you have nothing to write about, go live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your life experience will inform, oh, this is what I would write about. If you struggle with organization, great. Let's sit down. Let's map out the calendar. I will hold you accountable. Maybe we use Asana. Maybe we don't. Like, I want to do the thing with you so you accomplish your goal.
Yeah.
And so, or if you suck at writing, I have lived enough life to know people who can help you write better.
Yeah.
So let me introduce you to some guys and girls who literally write for a living, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, when it comes to this community, I want to see all of you win because I know winning is possible. And for everybody who's super, super Jesus loving them, don't be offended by what I'm going to say. I love Kendrick Lamar and I love Drake. And I love what recently has happened between both of them because they both have been going at it and it's been wildly entertaining for all of us who really like drama and culture and like hip hop because we're like, oh my gosh, did he really just sue him? You sued him. That's the wrong move to make. But the business part of his brain goes, oh, you don't really see all the reasons I'm suing him.
Yeah.
But the pop culture, like everybody else is going, you wouldn't have done that in the street. Everybody, that's like going home and telling your mama you got beat up instead of just getting better the next day and beating the dude up yourself. Like that's what happened. You went and told your parents, Drake. We all watched you go, Dad, he beat me. It's a bad look out here, right? But I say all that to say, when you look at them, the thing that no one's really saying out loud is Drake still has millions of people listening to his music.
Right.
Kendrick still has millions of people listening to it. They're still making money. There's like enough space for everyone. The challenge for me, my sensitive heart, if I'm being honest about it, a lot of my challenge with Nashville is I've seen so many people move here and get hurt.
Yeah.
And maybe they didn't meet the right people in a community. Maybe they thought that they were like all that in a bag of chips. And the reality of that not being the case overwhelmed them and sent them back. There's like several different layers. You could get a producer who screws you over, or you set up all these rights and writers don't show up. you're not really factoring in, oh, one of their kids was sick, one of their bosses did, blah, blah, blah. You just look at it as rejection, right?
Or sometimes it is rejection.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And so for me, what I'm trying to foster is a community where we go, if you really want to do the thing that you're passionate about, we will make room for you to do it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we're always going to fund it ourselves,
Right.
but we will support you in your endeavor.
Totally.
We will believe in the fact that you can do it. However, just like you see me and other people working, just like we see you working, you also have to put in the work.
Yeah.
If you just want to show up and it's already done for you, this is not how it's happened.
Totally.
Like, I am not Warren Buffett with all the money just tossing it out to dreamers and going, hey, with no structure and no payback and no blah, 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 just do your thing. No. We work hard. We dream hard. You work hard. You dream hard. I want to be able to see all the dreams that you tell me you have come to life.
The thing about, I should have mentioned moving to Nashville, like what are the things that you should know before you move here? I said, be a good hang. Don't be afraid to invest in yourself. Don't play things so close to the chest. The other one is define what success is, because that's sort of what you're describing here is like, yeah, we'll help you do whatever. But if success to you is, selling out Bridgestone Arena 3 nights in a row, that's great. That's going to take some work.
It's going to take a lot of work.
It's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
And a lot of money. If success to you looks like, oh, I played 3 gigs this weekend, and I was able to pay like half my rent doing that. Great. If success to you is I wrote a song this month, fantastic. It's a wonderful thing about success is that it's purely subjective and relative, and I think the sooner that you can define what it is to you, the sooner you're going to be successful.
I would add to that. I would also say, write down your definition of success now.
Absolutely.
And give yourself the freedom and the opportunity to come revise it later.
Yeah.
But as you revise it, also have the awareness that you can't self-impose that on other people.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so if at the beginning of the year you say, hey, I want to write 12 songs for the year, and then you get to the end of the year and you go, actually, I want to like do more than that. Great. But don't treat the people around you like it's their responsibility for that to happen.
Yeah.
You then, again, have to put in the work to make it happen.
That's the hard thing about being in bands is that because if you have 4 band members, that's like 4 different definitions of what success is. And that's incredibly difficult. And if they don't line up even just a little bit and no one's willing to budge, and if my definition of success looks like we're playing 3-week-long tours, but someone else's is playing 2 weekends out of the month, like that's not going to work.
Yeah.
One of us is going to leave or the band's going to break up. Like that's, so finding a band that actually works, like it's a miracle. It's like the conception of a child. Like so many things have to happen in order for this chemistry to it's amazing. And a band's almost like that too. And, I think that not imposing your definition of success on someone else's, the sooner you realize that, like, the happier you're going to be.
For the people who just met you for the first time, who have not heard your music yet, who've not read your writings yet, who've not come to a show yet, if we were to point them in the direction of Caleb, and I know you've already told us who you said you were before, who do you think you're becoming in the next year?
Oh, gosh. I think, who am I becoming? Someone who is willing to let the Lord lead creativity, probably more so than he ever has been. Someone who is who's finding, this might sound like an oxymoron, but finding a certain form of maturity and wonder, and realizing that how life-giving that is. and how I don't really let genre define who I am, which from a marketing perspective is probably horrible, but I just don't really care. Like, I'm going to write the songs that I want to write, that I have to write in the season I'm in. And, if that means, I'm a mandolin player. And so this last album that I released, I play guitar on every song. It's just me and a guitar. And so I kind of sat on it for a while, and I was really worried about the fact that I didn't play mandolin on it. And I was like, how am I going to play these songs live when I'm playing mandolin the whole time? And we're going to have to figure out how to play these songs on the mandolin. And one show, you're going to laugh because this is so stupid. One show, I put down the mandolin and I picked up the guitar, and the crowd did not explode. It's just stuff like that.
How dare them?
I know. It's just like, yeah, I play the guitar too. And no one cared.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, sing the song, dude. That's all we care about. And so it's stuff like that where who am I becoming is probably someone who is way more laid back and allowing sort of the Holy Spirit to lead in those directions. And you might be listening, and even if I go back and listen to this, I might roll my eyes at this, but it's just like, I think the Lord cares about the kind of music that you play. And, I think he cares about whether or not it's good. And I think he cares about probably whether or not it's accessible. And I love playing complicated, complex, harmonic stuff that's, sort of breaking the mold of or whatever. But if it doesn't tell a story that is communicating the greater good of what the gospel is, like, I don't really care about it. I'm not interested. And on the other side of the spectrum, if it's so simple, and when I say simple, there's nothing wrong with simplicity. I love simplicity. If it's so watered down that you almost have to sort of extend your imagination to for there to be more meaning in the song than what there actually is, like, it's not good. Like, I don't care about that either. And so I feel that way about a lot of worship songs, where it's like, this song could be interpreted probably 3,000 different ways. And I think, I'm a big Hemingway fan. Hemingway, he would edit and edit and edit his writings, his novels, until he said that every word in this book he put there intentionally, and he decided upon it. And
that requires a lot of patience.
It requires a lot of patience and a lot of work. And I think there's we need more songwriters that do that. And hopefully I'm becoming one of those songwriters. But I'd like to see someone who's just intentional with most things, and willing to be simple when it's simple, when willing to be lean into the complexity when it's complex. And so and that's what I mean by letting the Spirit lead that. And so that could be induce an eye roll or two, but like, that's who I hope to be.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Man, thank you so much for the gift of your time. Thanks to your wife for letting us come here today. And most of all, thank you for your dog.
Yeah.
Allowing us into her domain
to
record this today, man. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you.
Of course.
Thanks, man.
Amen.
Appreciate you.
Rejoice, for the light has come, and he is clothed in glory.